Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 28th of November 2024. That is, of course, Thanksgiving Day for my friends across the pond. I was going to do some joke about being colonials. No, which way round is it? Anyway, the way round where we, the British Empire, own you guys. That's what I wanted to say. I didn't say it, so just imagine I haven't said anything in the last 10 seconds. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful to you guys. Okay, right. We're going to start with some US-based stuff and some really good news to begin with. That is that Joe Biden's administration is preparing a $725 million package. So we're used to sort of 200 million, occasionally up to 400 and something. This is 725 million. This is sizable. I wonder, because I was looking at what it's made up of, and although there's no huge detail at the moment, the claims are anti-tank weapons, landmines, drones, Stinger missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, and cluster munitions. We go to the Euromaidan press. They say Biden's estimated 4 billion to 5 billion in presidential drawdown authority, so that's when they can take from US stocks and give it straight to Ukraine. He's asked Congress for 24 billion, of which 16 billion is replacement for US stuff that's been given due to the presidential drawdown authority. So actually there's not so much Ukraine aid as it is connected to Ukraine aid, because they wouldn't have that lacking had they not given that stuff to Ukraine, but you get my point. I have complained that Ukraine are going to be in a lot of trouble after the 20th of January if the Trump administration comes in and does not give them consistent amounts of aid that they've been used to. So some of these kind of what I'd say scare quotes boring aid packages are full of artillery ammunition, HIMARS ammunition, Stinger, Javelin, 84 missiles, TOW missiles and whatnot. Just the bog standard stuff they need to just keep fighting in the way that they are at the moment. Nothing outrageous like 200 Bradleys and stuff like that, but that's what they need. And if they stop getting that after the 20th of January, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to be needing to get that stuff from the EU, from other sources, but a lot of that will be American equipment, TOW missiles for American Bradleys, HIMARS missiles for American HIMARS systems. So they will need to go back to the US and either buy that directly or, and then it's not going to be a case of taking it from the US stocks, which means it takes them a lot longer to get that stuff. So this is a real worry. And I wonder whether this is a really big package that is still all boring stuff, but allows the US to have apportioned a bunch of equipment that they can deliver to Ukraine over the course of, say, the next 6 months. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I think that would be quite clever, and it's certainly what they would need. And if officials familiar with the plan told Reuters the package will include a variety of anti-tank weapons for US stocks designed to counter Russia's advancing troops. The arsenal comprises landmines, drones, Stinger missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, cluster munitions typically found in guided multiple launch rocket systems, rockets, so on and so forth. So, this is much bigger than, typically range from 125 to 250 million, the PDA ones recently. This is a lot bigger than that, depending on if you take 125 million as a kind of a normal one, then we've got 5 times the amount. Well, I wonder then whether that is exactly what, as I'm saying, that you have 5 months worth of that kind of equipment going out and on a monthly basis. That, to me, is really sensible if that is the case. Right, the Biden administration doesn't have enough time left, according to the Wall Street Journal, to use the billions of dollars lawmakers have authorized to arm Ukraine, leaving in Trump's hands what to do with the remaining money. So 6.5 billion is left in what is known as drawdown authority. Now, we've heard that there are going to be announcements every week. Here's one, so 725. It depends how big those are, but in order to use up all of that presidential drawdown authority, you're going to have to basically announce almost $1 billion a week. Well, they've started doing that, but do they have enough left in the tank? That's kind of why they want that 24 billion to replenish US stocks, possibly so they can give more US stocks. So Phillips O'Brien says from the Wall Street Journal, Biden administration is slow walking aid to Ukraine even in its dying days. I don't know that it's slow walking in its dying days. I'm wondering whether they just don't have the stocks. The US has loads of stocks, right? But they've given a load of stuff, and they have lots of stocks in now places that, Ukraine might not need so much of. So, they have loads of Abrams tanks, right? Thousands of Abrams tanks sitting out in the desert, gathering dust. Okay, brilliant, but actually the Ukrainians don't really need tanks. They need Bradleys, so I reckon you will see some Bradleys. But they need this stuff. They just need the ammunition. They need howitzers and ammunition and rockets and missiles and all that kind of stuff. And I think the US is going to be struggling to be able to give that without replenishing those stocks. So the Biden administration doesn't have enough time left, is the claim from the Wall Street Journal. Now, the US has sent emergency aid to Ternopil. I mentioned this in the live stream last night. Since there was a Russian attack there 2 nights ago, and it really critically hit energy infrastructure. 400 tons of salt to a local heating company, 4 heat and power cogeneration units, says the US ambassador to Ukraine, 2,800 meters of pipes and 2 repair vehicles to ensure heat and water to households and essential facilities. Also, we hear that the Biden administration is pushing Ukraine to mobilize young men from the age of 18, according to the Associated Press. The recommendation stems from what the administration describes as, quote, the pure math of Ukraine's situation now. It is that it needs more troops in the fight. This is one of those difficult ones. There are as many people on one side as the other of this argument. The argument is you need to mobilize everyone. Look at the Second World War. Stop ring fencing young people, blah, blah, blah. And yes, you need boots on the ground. There needs to be a mobilization for everyone over the age of 18. Okay, you can make a good argument for that. They need those people. On the other hand, they also need to kind of protect the future of their economy, of their culture, of their knowledge base. And so allowing people to go through uni, to go through training, to vocational training, to have children, that's the kind of like age where they're more likely to have children. Get all that done, maybe, arguably. And then, after 25, we will mobilize them. That was already reduced from 27 to 25. Now the US is saying it should be reduced from 25 to 18. There are good arguments either way, right? And I don't think it's so easy. And it's also a little bit dangerous. Well, you get, on the one hand, it's a little bit off the US saying you need to send these people to their deaths effectively. You need to send these people off to the war. Ukraine could say, hey, it's not your place to tell us that. But then the US is providing Ukraine with all of this equipment. So, okay, well, we're the ones providing you with all this kind of equipment. So, etc., etc. It is definitely a challenging dilemma. Anyway, Ilya Ponomarenko says, sorry, but lowering the draft age to 18 for the sake of getting more manpower while partners still spend months and years weighing the risks of escalation with every single weapon and equipment type that Ukraine begs for does not seem like a good long-term strategy. And lots of people chiming in on this, looking at demographics and whatnot. It is... it is difficult, isn't it? I mean, this is an interesting statistic. So you're looking at the prime age of the population that they're wanting to mobilize more, and actually there is a real issue with the number of people in Ukraine of that age. So there are, as I say, arguments for and against that. It isn't so clear cut as some might like to think it is. Right, moving on to aid. Outside of the US, South Korea has refused to sell weapons to Ukraine because their legislation prohibits exports to warring countries. Rustam Umarov was there yesterday with a team with a wish list of air defense missiles and artillery systems and other equipment that they would like to buy. South Korea saying no. I'm hoping there's other agreements that have been done under the radar there. Otherwise, that's a wasted trip. South Korea are an incredibly important potential assister of Ukraine, and it will be a shame if that's a dead end. German aid to Ukraine saying 2 brief but interesting statements from an interview conducted today with Major General Christian Freuding, who's head of the Planning and Command Staff and head of the Situation Center Ukraine in the German MOD, on Deutschlandfunk. So first of all, North Korean soldiers. He estimates that the deployment of North Korean soldiers will not make a big difference on the battlefield, both in terms and quality. in terms of quality and quantity, because they, for example, have to be fully equipped by Russia, even with small things like clothing. They also have to be first familiarized with modern equipment like drones. There is a language and cultural barrier. There is no joint training with Russian troops, and it's not known how they will be integrated into the Russian units. Okay, yes, all of that, I agree. It makes it difficult for Russia, but they are getting a plentiful supply of both troops and materiel, it turns out. Greg Terry was speaking to a Korean recently who was saying that the understanding over on the peninsula is that North Korea are going to be supplying 100,000 troops. If that's true, this is a problem. Yeah, there will be issues with integration and equipping them, etc., etc. But eventually all you need to do is just give them a gun and tell them to run at that position, or drive them to that position, and you have people with guns that Ukrainians have to deal with. I think it is too easy to dismiss the challenge of the North Korean soldiers and equipment. Don't forget. So now we're under the impression that 62 self-propelled guns and 62 multiple launch rocket systems have been delivered by North Korea, and that is 13,000 containers of equipment, possibly 9 million shells, etc., etc. North Korea is an incredibly important ally for Russia. Okay, second point, what's next for US aid? Currently, he says, most of it is pure speculation, but he knows from conversations with Ukrainian officials that the Ukrainian government has been looking very closely at various scenarios, and that there has been intensive contact with the future US government. He added that he did not get the impression from these talks that the Ukrainians had to fear that US aid would be cut to zero when Donald Trump takes office next year. This is in line with the assessment of the Situation Center Ukraine of the German MOD, which is of the same opinion. Interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with the Trump administration, because you have certain people in the GOP, the old school Republicans, who are hawkish and see Russia for who they are, but you have the MAGA contingent of the Republican Party who are anti-Ukraine and apparently kind of pro-Russia. Now he has in place Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor, and he has the envoy of Keith Kellogg that I was talking about last night in the breaking news update that I was quite positive about. However, he is an 80-year-old envoy only, and his position vis-a-vis, kind of the generalities of the war and what Biden administration should have done might not actually jive too much with the rest of the administration. So we need to be, I'm not trying to be negative about Trump, but although I was positive about Kellogg, we're hearing today that basically I said the most negative part about Kellogg was his peace plan that he wrote with Fred Fleitz, which is, we're going to force you to the table and if you don't come to the table, we're going to do this, and we're going to force you to the table. If you don't come, we're going to do that. Now, that is apparently exactly what they are going to be forcing on the Ukrainians. If that's the case, then actually that's not that great for Ukraine, in my personal opinion. So there's so much speculation, of course. Most of it will be speculation, but there's a lot to be worked out. And I hope that the Trump administration is going to be working things out. They're not just going to come in and say, right, I've got this prejudged opinion of Ukraine, and I've got this already defined position, and no matter what we learn, this is what's going to happen. I hope there's an element of listening to what the intelligence says, listening to the advice of the Pentagon and the DoD, and reacting accordingly. Now, possibly as a result of the Trump administration coming in, or maybe this was a contingency plan anyway, or something that Europe was always going to do. I don't know. I think this has been expedited by a potential pivot away from Ukraine and Europe from the Trump administration. But the Baltic and Nordic countries and Poland are to step up support for Ukraine in the coming months, says a Kyiv Independent. The heads of government of Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, Finland, Norway, Poland and Sweden agreed to strengthen their support to Ukraine in the coming months to counter Russia's full-scale war. Quote from TVP World, Polish source, Anne Applebaum is spreading this. We are committed to strengthening our deterrence and defense against conventional as well as hybrid attacks, and to expanding sanctions against Russia, as well as against those who enable Russia's aggression, Nordic and Baltic states plus Poland. Very clear. That's interesting, because it's not just about supporting Ukraine with military aid, but actually it's sanctioning those who are helping Russia as well. As Mikko Laaksonen here says on Blue Sky, one thing Russia should understand: jointly Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Sweden, Denmark and Norway can destroy a first Russian attack wave on them and inflict catastrophic damage on the Baltic Sea Navy. This is with current capabilities without US support. People underestimate the power of all of those nations combined. Poland has been spending inordinate amounts of money on their defence. The Finnish and Swedish armed forces are very capable and have a pretty good capacity. Their combined air forces in the Nordic states, personally, Russia would be absolutely tonked in conventional warfare with those countries alone in their present state. Russia has been absolutely attrited, degraded hugely, and those countries alone would be able to deal, I think, a death blow to Russia. Now, here's a joint statement from the Nordic Baltic Summit here, which I'll just quickly read through. We, the heads of government of those states, met today in Husband at a pivotal time for our security. As a result of this summit, all the leaders in the Nordic Baltic countries and Poland have agreed the following. We are determined to shoulder our responsibility for Euro-Atlantic security as we face grave security threats and challenges. We are united by a shared perception of threats and readiness to do what is needed to counter them. The transatlantic bond is indispensable, and we will increase our collective efforts to keep ourselves and all our allies safe. We will strengthen and support our support to Ukraine. Our countries are the largest per capita contributors of military assistance to Ukraine, and our support will not waver. So remember, these nations are the best suppliers of assistance to Ukraine per capita and as a percentage of GDP, I think. Yes, US gives the largest amount as a single country because they are a much larger individual country, both in terms of population and in terms of GDP. But per capita and per percent of GDP, these nations do a better job. They're just smaller nations, right? Ukraine must be able, Ukraine must be able to prevail against Russia's aggression to ensure a comprehensive, just and lasting peace. In the coming months, we will step up our support, including to the Ukrainian defense industry, and we will invest in making more ammunition available to Ukraine. So that goes to what I was worrying about previously with the America stepping back with consistent aid to Ukraine. Ukraine's courage and resilience will be backed by strong and steadfast support of our country by our countries, whereby military assistance is an integral part. We encourage others to do the same. We support the Ukrainian victory plan. We are committed to a comprehensive, just and lasting peace for Ukraine and its full European and Euro-Atlantic integration. This is really, really strong, by the way. This is exactly what Ukraine wants to hear. Russia remains the most significant and direct threat to our security in the long term. Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine and increasing use of hybrid actions have shattered peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area and gravely undermined global security. We will work together to constrain, contest and counter Russia's aggressive and highly confrontational actions, as well as to ensure its full international accountability for the crime of aggression. Together with our allies, we are committed to strengthening our deterrence and defence, including resilience against conventional as well as hybrid attacks, and to expanding sanctions against Russia as well as against those who enable Russia's aggression, thus threatening our common security. Excellent stuff from these nations. This gives me real hope that in light of a potential American restriction on assistance to Ukraine, that actually other nations are going to step up and allow Ukraine to get the optimal outcome for this war. Now, the Royal Netherlands Navy today has said a ceremonial farewell to the, I don't know what ZRMS stands for, but the Macum, the mine hunter, has been taken out of service after 40 years. The Macum will be donated to Ukraine. They're also getting mine hunters from the UK as well. So they have quite a fleet of those, and they'll probably need them for the Black Sea after the end of the war. Now, the Netherlands has provided 3 Patriot launchers. I presume this is extra. Lots of people are reporting on this at the moment. This is the defense of Ukraine, the Ukrainian MOD, saying we're grateful to our Dutch friends for their vital support for protecting lives and critical infrastructure. Strengthening Ukraine's air defense becomes particularly crucial with the onset of winter as Russia plans to plunge Ukraine into darkness. and their plans remain unchanged. So it appears that 3 other launchers have been sent to Ukraine from the Netherlands. This is really good news. I wonder whether these are truck-mounted ones. I can't tell from here whether they are. I know there are trucks involved, but whether the actual launchers are truck-mounted, which means that's the way that Germany do it, and not the way that the US do it. The German ones are the ones that have been able to be moved around and moved closer to the front line, get used, and then hopefully moved away before they get struck. That's what I'd like to see. The Lombardy region of Italy has signed a memorandum with Zaporizhia for cooperation in reconstruction efforts. The agreement, signed on the 28th of November, follows discussions between Zaporizhia's Ivan Fedorov and Lombardy's President Attilio Fontana after their meeting in Berlin. So good news there that Italy, although nationally is not helping quite as much as they could and should, it's good to see regional areas helping. Lithuania supports France's idea of possibly sending Western troops to Ukraine, and the country will not need NATO permission. This was stated by Lithuanian ambassador to the alliance, Davidas Matulionis. However, he admitted that sending Western troops to Ukraine is currently just an idea, and different countries have different positions on this. So it doesn't always have to be a NATO thing, a NATO sanctioned thing. Now, there's been this thing rumbling on. I haven't reported it, but there have been loads of defective mortar rounds that Ukraine has made themselves. They initially were claiming this was a storage issue, that actually they were manufactured fine. I don't know what the latest is, but they are withdrawing 100,000 defective mortar rounds. A major quality control crisis has emerged in Ukraine's domestic ammunition production program, as military units report only 1 in 17 mortar rounds actually is functioning properly. This has been really good news that Ukraine has been able to ramp up production of mortar rounds. You chomp through mortar rounds really, really quickly. But my goodness, if that's your success rate, 1 in 17, you've got serious problems. So they need to sort that out ASAP. North Korea has ramped up military support for Russia. 18,000 I said 13,000 earlier. 18,000 ammunition containers. 100 plus ballistic missiles have been shipped to Ukraine, which have been used, I believe, by Russia. Shipped to the Ukraine war, so that's shipped to Russia for use against Ukraine. Lots of troops, obviously, but also lots of, as I mentioned earlier, SPGs, MLRS, artillery ammunition, and missiles. Right, Putin has continued his own missile and nuclear threat at the CSTO meeting in Astana, which I reported earlier, that is in Kazakhstan, I believe. Russia produces 10 times more missiles than all NATO countries put together and will increase production by a quarter, says Putin. New missile systems can appear in Russia as well. Russian Iskander is an analogue of all 3 modifications of the ATACMS, but its range is larger. So it's like your ATACMS are rubbish, we've got Iskander. Russia's hypersonic missiles systems have no analogies in the world, so no one can do the Kinzhal missile like we can. Russia's military are currently choosing targets to hit with Oreshnik on Ukrainian territory. In the event of a massive use of the Oreshnik, the force of the strike will be comparable to a nuclear weapon. Wow. Russia started serial production of Oreshnik. This is really big rhetoric from Russia, by the way. A lot of saber rattling and possibly a lot of boasting of weaponry that is somewhat unjustified, but they are ramping up the rhetoric there. Interesting. Putin boasted about Oreshnik medium-range ballistic missile system, claiming Russia has several ready for deployment. Quote, everything that is in the epicenter of the explosion is divided into fractions, into elementary particles, and turns into dust, in fact, said Putin. Goodness. Right, okay. A Russian nuclear risk is low, though, despite Biden's weapon policy shift, according to US intelligence, says the Euromaidan press. Putin's threats are unlikely to escalate into nuclear conflict, so he's going down the Oreshnik route here. Understand what he's saying in terms of your escalation ladder, in terms of saber rattling, in terms of psychology, trying to scare the rest of the world away from helping Ukraine. So hybrid warfare is more probable than a nuclear strike, and we are seeing hybrid warfare, of course, already. And in fact, that conglomeration of nations has been very explicit in talking about hybrid warfare. And we hear today, I haven't got it here, I've got it in a geopolitics section. NATO, or some nations are saying, we're pretty much at the point where this hybrid warfare is going to trigger Article 5, which is what I've been saying for freaking a year and a half. Like, we say it's war when a tank comes across our border, but when if a bomb was to drop on a hospital, we would say that is war. But if it's taken out, if a hospital network's taken out by cyber warfare, we're like, oh, that's hybrid warfare. We know Russia's done it, but that's not seen as. At what point does this trigger Article 5? At what point do you say, hang on, that's functionally the same as dropping a bomb on it? Dropping a bomb on a hospital and maybe leading to some deaths, but functionally taking out the hospital is the same as. Functionally the same as taking out that hospital by taking out its IT networks that also leads to the death of people who are getting treatment at that hospital at the time. This is functionally the same. The hospital stopped working and you've attacked it. But because it's cyber warfare, we're like, oh, no, that's not Article 5. Well, no, in my book, that's warfare. And I would add information warfare is a form of warfare. Now, there are going to be different understandings of when is enough to trigger Article 5. And there are lots of arguments we can have about that. But we need to be having those discussions out in the open. And we need to be understanding that Russia, in our media, we need to be blaming Russia for what Russia is doing. There are not enough people in the US at the moment who understand who Russia are and what they're actually doing. And the fact that they are attacking the US with cyber warfare and information warfare every single freaking day. Somehow, Ukraine are the bad guys in their minds. Somehow. Now, interesting thing that we have seen, and this is good news for the US administration, and I talked about this with Greg Terry, is that Trump has been quiet on Ukraine. He hasn't actually waded in with his ill-informed opinions on Ukraine that we've seen before. And interestingly, we haven't heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen Donald Trump Jr., David Sachs and Elon Musk really slag off Ukraine in the open ways that they were, even after the election. I wonder whether there's been some requests from the administration or from the DOD or from the Pentagon for those people to shut the frick up. Maybe they are still seeing it, and I just haven't. I've been on Blue Sky more than I have on Twitter. I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if they'd been told to shut up, because they're not helping. Because those in the know who Russia are and what they're like. Those who aren't in the know are Egypts like Elon Musk, David Sachs, and Donald Trump Jr. But interestingly, Trump Sr. has been a bit quiet about Ukraine, and I think that's a good sign. He's not saying wingnut stuff that is unjustified. He's not saying anything at all, hopefully because he's being fed with intelligence now that he is the incoming administration. And being privy to that intelligence will change the key people's opinions on Ukraine and Russia. I hope that's the case. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.